So James, before we get into expense management, can you give us a quick intro into NUMARQE and what your product is all about?
Yeah, of course. So NUMARQE is essentially a complete payables platform that's underpinned by credit. So what that means is we give CFOs and finance teams the ability to control all their corporate spend in one place, but also access credit lines through our underwriting so they can manage their working capital super efficiently. We're primarily targeted at mid-sized corporates, and often those corporates have an international focus. And really that's because the platform's really well suited for corporate complexity, things like international payments, foreign exchange management, flexibility in how credit's allocated across the business to users. So I've come from that background of the corporate side, working in international companies, and so I've took my learnings from that into how we've designed the product fit for a CFO or finance team.
And I understand you've got customers in quite a wide range of businesses.
Yeah, we're kind of sector agnostic at the moment. We've had a lot of success in sectors like recruitment, professional services, technology, but we've also got into more kind of engineering and construction firms as well.
Okay.
Firms in the oil and gas sector, for example, as well as companies that just have a lot of people on the ground spending corporate money to fulfill projects or do business development. So, that can range in, as I said, professional services, but also firms like travel companies and any kind of construction companies where you've got engineers traveling around buying materials and helping them make repairs and installing projects of an industrial scale.
Yeah, I mean, lots of businesses, all businesses have got lots of kind of like costs and expenses that need managing. So I can see why it's appealing to many. And so I just wanted to ask about, at what point did you realise that expense management tools were something that you needed to build into the product? Was there something in particular that your users were struggling with?
I think, we work closely with corporates and CFOs, and there were clear pain points that emerged. Often it's around the lack of real-time visibility and control on corporate spend, and having the ability to make sure that staff are given the empowerment to make corporate expenditure, but there's a level of control that they're not exceeding their budgets or their pre-assigned approved limits. So that was very evident early on, that to produce a product where you're providing credit, you've got to have with that the ability to control how that credit's allocated across the business to users, and ultimately deployed effectively and efficiently. So I guess we saw, key themes were kind of fragmented spend in large corporates. They've got different bank relationships, different payment processes, scattered data all over the place. So bringing that into one platform is super powerful for them. But that lack of real-time control that often permeates around authorizations and budget allocations, where you need robust workflows, needed to be brought into the platform fairly quickly. And then you think about supplier payments, and paying suppliers can be super inefficient. Often firms are not getting optimized payment terms, for example, or find it difficult to reconcile payments against those suppliers. So there's a whole sort of processing and reconciling issues that needed to be addressed. So it's not just about providing credit when they need it; it's also embedding that into their payment processes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like finance teams have got a lot of kind of plates to spin and a lot of things that they need to consider. I mean, it's no surprise that finance teams in particular, like effective ways to control things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an ex-CFO, and I lived and breathed it for many years, so I can definitely sympathise with the use case. And I don't know everything, but a lot of the customers that we've had on board have given us ideas and pointers as to features or controls that they needed that we didn't necessarily have from day one. So the product's always designed with the end user in mind, and I think that shows with the level of scale we've achieved and the loyalty customers have shown us.
When you looked at building these capabilities, what made you go down the embedded finance route instead of building it all yourselves?
I think the main thing was speed to market was paramount. We wanted to solve customers' pain points as quickly as possible and get a product out there that they found valuable and could help us get the live feedback we wanted. So to develop a kind of full stack banking infrastructure behind it would obviously take a considerable amount of time. You need to comply with all licenses, integrations, regulatory hurdles, etc. So we realized that by leveraging with embedded finance partner, we could get that best-in-class infrastructure that would allow us to scale not just domestically in the UK but globally, across card issuing, payments, and the underlying ledgers behind that. So really, it was about delivering the product in as short a period of time as possible, but building a product that was immensely scalable. I guess the second thing is the kind of compliance side. I've come from a regulated background. I know how complex and the burden that's required, and offering financial services under a regulatory license when you're very small and with small budgets is the challenge. And when you think about resourcing and applications for things like FCA authorization, that can take many months and be very expensive. So again, partnering with an embedded finance provider means you can lean on their compliance expertise and know that you're complying with regulation, but it's de-risking us in the sense that we're not reliant on getting approval to go live.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we say here, whenever we go through a bit of compliance, interpret a regulation, make sure that our product is in line with regulation, and go through some pain, and it can be painful. That's pain that we're sort of like taking away from our customers, so they don't have to do it. I suppose it's a similar thing in payments as well, that, as you said, it's complex, and there's lots of different aspects that you have to think about. And if with a partner like ours, we're focusing on payments all of the time, and it takes away some of that complexity and hopefully delivers it in a little bit more of an easier way to consume.
Yeah, and what's also great is it helps us focus on what we're good at, and for us, that's really helping scale our AI-driven credit decisioning and how we apply that to serve our customers better. And that's not just providing credit for working capital needs, but also all the insights and analysis we do on customer spend to help them be more efficient in the way they run their payables process. So we can essentially invest in the stuff that we're good at while relying on the player behind us that helps us stay compliant and again de-risks us.
Definitely, yeah. You want to focus on the sort of like your USP and the value that you're adding to your customers. Okay, cool. So can we take a look to see where embedded finance actually shows up in NUMARQE? And maybe you can walk us through where in the product the expense capabilities live in practice. Like, what does it look like for a user?
So I'll just show here how cards are managed and allocated on our platform. So this is actually a live account at the moment. So if I, for example, look to myself, I've got a card here with its details and expiry. You can see there's a limit, and it's no spend so far, so it's got full limit left on the credit remaining. But you can see I've got an active physical card, and also this icon indicates it's a virtual card as well. So there's a kind of control panel here at the top showing how the card limits are allocated, how much credit's remaining, and our overall sub-account minute limits, which essentially is the aggregate credit limit for the company across all payments. So to look at kind of how embedded finance works, if you see how quickly it is to add a card. So when you click add card, we have a authorization process through SMS messages. So I'll just get that code and enter it. And the reason we do that is obviously for security. Anything that requires allocating funds or making outflows, you need to have an authorization process behind it.
It's really great to see how you've kind of like embedded these capabilities and the clear UI that you've come up with. It's excellent.
Yeah, and again, it's all about being clean and visually concise, that you can essentially do this stuff without any training. So you can see, create a card, we can assign it to a user. So obviously you have to have a user to assign a card to. So I can assign myself another card, for example. I could call this my marketing budget card. So often we have customers that will allocate cards based on department or project. We have the confirmation phone number to go to for the SMSs, and you can have a billing addresses there. If you want a physical card, click through, and then you can see we've got funds to allocate. So I can put, say, £100 on that card, or I can set a max transaction limit. So that obviously means you can only spend up to that limit in one go. And you can choose your currencies as well. Click through.
So these are some of the controls that the finance teams and CFOs were looking for that you were talking about?
Yeah, so they're like the very one-level limit card controls to get through to get the card going. And then there's various sub-controls you can have thereafter if you want them. So it really, we don't want too many limits in our business because it's a small firm and we know where we stand, but other companies may have lots of additional limits to apply as well, which gives them that level of control as they need it. So here we can order a physical card. I'm not going to do that because that means it will arrive in the post this week, but I can create the virtual card immediately. And the card has been created, and so then I can view that card. And you can see we have our marketing budget card, and then we can start spending immediately on that card now. That's live. Similarly, if I don't want that card to exist anymore, I can either freeze it, which stops any payments going through. For example, if there was a transaction you felt needed double checking, could be a fraud event, you can freeze it, no transactions can be processed, or you can deactivate it. In this case, I'm going to deactivate it, give a reason, demo example, and I can press deactivate, and that card is now gone and cannot be used anymore. So that's just a quick snapshot of the simplicity of embedded finance with cards.
Yeah, it's very clear.
I'll stop sharing for now, but hopefully you can see that this kind of technology now just makes management of the business and spend, firstly, very easy to manage, but also, very empowering to the finance team. You can build in things such as pre-approval flows as well. So, if someone wants to have a card for a one-off purpose, get pre-approval, card gets set up, has the irrelevant limit, gets used for that particular spend requirement, and then can be deactivated thereafter. So, we think
it's really clear to have all of those kind of things in one place, and it's nice to see how you've presented the kind of spend capabilities in your platform. Yeah, very crisp and clean. So as you were building this, were there any sort of lessons that you learned along the way? Kind of like, what did you start with and what did you add once you saw it was working?
Yes, I guess our thesis is providing flexible credit to businesses, and that's underpinned by our credit underwriting software. So we've been doing that for a few years, and really what products could sit on top of that credit underwriting capabilities. And so we started with cards, and the reason was that can address immediate working capital needs of a corporate, provides that kind of entry-level transaction visibility, but still empowers finance to really get a handle on their spend through users. So it was a simple and straightforward offering to bring to market as the first instance of how we provide flexible credit. And then obviously as we grew, we saw that there was a demand more for more complexity in global payments, particularly around invoice payments and to suppliers and recurring expenses. So then we moved that capability beyond cards into invoices and global payments, which really created that all-in-one payables platform that we envisaged from day one. And from there we're looking to make CFOs and finance teams even more kind of self-serving and autonomous in the way they manage their spend through the platform. So that means we're looking to integrate procurement and project management tools as well, so that it's all about putting through all their spend through the platform. Doesn't even necessarily to be through credit, can be through traditional bank payments as well, but also managing purchase orders versus invoices in that kind of procure to pay cycle, and building in that kind of project management functionality where you can segregate and code and report all your payments in a way that reflects your business use case. So we want to be end to end in the sense that you can manage your cash flows flexibly. You can always meet your outgoing requirements through the platform as to what you need to spend, but you also get that reporting and analysis that you need to give you that visibility after the event. And from that, we have integrations into accounting software as well. So
what do you mean a bit more about project management? So I understand the pre-procurement flow and the invoices, but when you talk about project management, what do you mean?
So things like having multi-matrix level coding, being able to sort of code by line item and cost center in multiple ways, but also allocating budgets fundamentally to spend. So comparing projects on a budget basis and allocating that spend and purchase orders to those projects, so you can see how many purchase orders have gone out against the budget, how much actual invoices have been paid against that purchase order, how much budget is remaining, that kind of stuff, and then tracking it over time graphically, so you can really see your timeline of your budget and how much is left is essentially to execute on a budget. If has that project gone over budget, and what things have caused that. So building in
it's really going back to making sure that you serve the original problem that you identified for your kind of customer base that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, I think everything's sort of a natural extension of the underlying thesis, which is how do you manage your payables process to meet your business needs in a completely flexible way. And part of that is having it underpinned by a credit line that gives you those cash flows when your cash isn't necessarily there, maybe from seasonality reasons, but you still need to deliver, knowing that you're going to have a big cash inflow in the future, and then managing your project according to those cash flows.
Yeah, very good, interesting. And did anything kind of surprise you about how people are using your product? Are there any use cases that emerged that you didn't originally plan for?
I think we were surprised at actually how the size of spend and individual transaction limits could be quite high. The demand for that surprised us. So we've built that capability of you guys to offer very high single transaction limits, which isn't actually as easy as it sounds, and is kind of way beyond the normal banking infrastructure limits that you kind of get standardized with a commercial bank. So what was interesting about that was we could have a customer spending one day a couple of thousand on a card, and the next day it could be a couple of 100,000. So
Yeah,
having limits assigned that are configurable to react to that, but also making sure the working capital flows were at the right level to support that, was a learning for us. But again, as we moved into sort of more focused on projects, you can see why. But that was, that actual size of limits was, I guess, something we didn't expect to be implemented, at least quite so soon as it was.
yeah. You need
Um,
to understand your customers that this is a sort of like requirement for them, and then have the levers to pull to be able to deliver it for them.
yeah, and then I think other things that probably took us by surprise were that demand for kind of on the go teams who want to take their snapshot of their receipt, upload it, get all their project approvals done for spend instantaneously, kind of pushing the development in that direction very quickly early on. We realized very quickly that companies saw the use case immediately, and then obviously wanted that to be as slick as possible. So, in essence, the customer drove our development through their feedback. We were probably more surprised at how the mobile type applications were more desirable in some cases, especially for the end user, than the actual platform
Yeah.
itself. The finance manager and the CFO is on the platform controlling it, but the end user, they just want it on their phone, ready to go.
I mean, we've talked quite a lot actually about the finance teams and the CFO and the control that it gives. But and you mentioned there a little bit more about the end user, the employee. So what do they get out of it as well? How are they benefiting?
Well, the obvious thing is it's all about negating the pain point of expense reimbursements and how our platform can help address that. Being proactive in the control of spend rather than more of a retrospective review of those reimbursements. So, if you think about an employee who's got a reimbursement process, they're pretty much out of pocket, having spent their own money. It could be for weeks. They're pretty much giving their company an interest-free loan.
Yeah.
So that's not ideal. And then the manager's sort of point of view is they've got this influx of receipts and expense claims at one period of the month that probably some poor soul in finance has got to go through and process and
Yeah,
chase.
I think both sides don't like doing the receipts, do they?
It's just horrible. And obviously my previous life we lived this every month, and then the reconciliation process itself and coding, it really adds up in large companies, global companies as well. Chasing someone overseas for a receipt on a specific day at a specific venue is unlikely to happen. And overall, there's a lack of oversight. So when you think about fraud or has the employee done appropriate spend, difficult to really react to after the event. So I think with our cards and with the smart spend controls and the approval flows, that visibility is there. There's a kind of pre-approval process that can be built in. Obviously, you can capture receipts instantly. You can code instantly. And I just think the visibility for everyone, both the end user and the controllers in the business, it just eliminates a lot of friction in the corporation itself. So for us, having dynamic limits that you can flex to cards at any time, kind of overcomes the need to go out and put money in your own pocket as an employee and spend. Just get a virtual card spun up in a second, like I showed you, and off you go, complete that spending, and then deactivate the card. There's a ton. I just think personally it's a no-brainer in terms of controls and transparency.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it sounds a lot more convenient for a user rather than having to spend their own money, claim back on expenses. What if these sorts of things are really quite chunky expenditures as well? Yeah, that you don't want to, you haven't got the capabilities to do it. So I can see, yes, it being kind of like popular both from the user's point of view and to avoid those kind of like receipts reimbursements.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, kind of what's next? What role do you see embedded finance playing in NUMARQE's product in the future? Where do you want to take this next?
I mean, I think it's central to our vision and has been from day one. We're predominantly strong in the UK, but we have
Okay.
huge vision to expand internationally. We already have international firms on our books, but actually having that scaled out into new jurisdiction, we need embedded finance to help us do that in the same way we have done up to this point. So, it's a complementary partnership between us and yourself in how we both scale together. And obviously, there's a use case behind each kind of international frontier that we cross. But we do believe that this pain that we see being solved for our current customer base is endemic across all major international organizations. So scaling international is vital for us, and with that comes overcoming all those local issues around regulatory compliance, currency, payments, settlement issues, having those controls available that we've got today, so that it's just seamless from an end user perspective is where we want to go. And then I think, from the product side, we kind of touched on it. It's getting to that next level of, project management and projection analytics. So not only can you spend through the platform, you can actually forecast ahead and, see where you'll be as the project goes through its natural cycle, and just give much more robust information to the business. Whether that's, hey, we've got an overspend here. Why did it happen? How do we fix it? Or actually, that's a viable overspend. We need to now project that out forwards and recalculate what our kind of end budget outlay will be. So that's kind of how we're thinking about things.
Yeah, I mean, spotting those problems which are common to lots of different types of businesses, and being able to kind of like execute on a solution that helps solve it for them, and then that's the secret sauce sort of stuff, isn't it? So yeah, it sounds exciting. So I mean, coming of a conclusion now and drawing this together, I just wanted to ask you as well, James, whether you had any sort of top tips for a company like NUMARQE who is considering an embedded finance project.
Oh, there's a question. I would say you've got to have a clear plan, but build in contingency to that plan. So, when you're outlining your MVP, think about time and resources with what but also things that could go wrong you don't know, because financial services is complex and there's always nuances, whether it's regulatory, sort of payments infrastructure, APIs, security. All these things can cause delays that you didn't expect. So just make sure that you've got that timeline worked out, but build in contingency and a bit of buffer. I would also say one thing that I think feel quite strongly about is focus on solving your customers' problems, and don't get tempted to try and build everything and have akin to kind of a feature war mission. And what I mean by that is that there's always more you can build that sounds cool, looks cool, maybe unique, but ultimately if it's not used, or it's not used with rapid adoption, then it's probably not that relevant to your journey as a business. So focus on what the real USP is and what you're trying to solve, and that will set you a long way, and give you that focus you need to kind of deliver on time.
Gosh, yeah. Avoiding unnecessary feature wars and focusing kind of like on your core USP. Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah. And so it's a bit easier for me, I suppose, because I lived and breathed some of this pain, but still we're always getting feedback that I hadn't thought about, or I didn't experience, because that was a long time ago now. But again, it's is this a real pain point common to your customer base, or is this just a kind of unique feature that one customer wants and may only use it one or two times and then never uses it again? So just always think about that every time you're building something. I mean, I suppose have a vision. Again, I guess back to that kind of similar point. Just have a vision of the end user experience. Like, try and see it from their point of view. Like, how am I going to use this product if I'm a user? How does it make my life better? How does it solve my pain and my problems? And how does it actually empower me to do my job better? That's really important, because you can build anything, but if it doesn't actually engage and empower that customer or that end user, then you've just built a bit of kit, but you've not actually built a solution.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's user centricity, and putting yourself in their shoes and checking that you're kind of delivering value for them. Yeah, it's a key piece of the puzzle. Okay, I mean, well, that was great. Thank you, James. Very interesting conversation, and I loved looking through the product to see how you're kind of applying these things. And of course, looking forward to continue to work with you on those the future plans that you were talking about.
Likewise. Been a pleasure as always, Noel. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, James.